I was one of the most profitable traders in the whole world at 24 years old. That shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be possible. But the reason it is possible is because if you go onto the trading floors, it's entirely populated by people who only know rich people. So they're kids. They have no experiential understanding of the economy. And yet I was one of the only people on that trading floor that knew the economy from both sides. So I had such a huge advantage of understanding how the economy works. I had a really good time at grammar school. I mean, you know, you were at school with me. I really enjoyed it there. You'll also be aware I was expelled from grammar school. It's quite possible I wouldn't have been able to get the kind of job that I eventually got if I didn't go there. Not because it made me smart or anything, but simply because it meant that I got in touch with a lot of people from better off backgrounds, mostly in the Indian community, who knew how to get these jobs and also knew what the good jobs are. I think one of the big things that stops smart kids from poorer or ordinary backgrounds from getting the best paid jobs is simply a straight lack of information. And that happens at many, many steps along the way. First of all, the schools don't inform them that if you want to get the best job, you need to go to the top uni. And if you want to go to the top uni, you need to get these grades and you need to do these kinds of subjects. So if you go to an ordinary school, you might get the impression that getting a few A stars, a few A's and a few B's is really good results. And it's much better than average results. But the fact is, if you want to compete for the top unis with kids from the private schools, you need to get A stars or A's in every exam. I mean, you know that, I know that, and the Indian kids we went to school with, they know that and they told me that. But ordinary people don't get told that, they don't know that. And then they don't know if you don't take the right subjects, then you're not going to get into the top unis. And then they're not actually told what the top unis are. So a girl who I dated for a bit, really nice girl, really smart girl, she went to Manchester Metropolitan University, right? I'm sure it's a great university, but it's a lot less prestigious than Manchester University. She didn't know that those were different universities, right? And nobody was telling her, right? And this is the kind of lack of information that people are getting. And I went to London School of Economics, right? And that is a super, super prestigious university. If you get into the London School of Economics, you have a really good chance of getting a really good job. But a lot of ordinary people have never heard of that university. They've heard of Oxford and Cambridge, but they don't know London School of Economics, So it's, at every step of the way, ordinary people are not getting the good information. You need to be told, look, if you want to get the best job, you need to go to the best uni. These are the best unis. If you want to get into those unis, you need to get these kind of grades. Those kind of grades are not good enough. You need to get these kinds of grades. They don't get told the syllabus is online, if you learn this stuff. They don't get told that doing well in exams, a lot of it is about memorization. They don't get given any of this good information. And then each step of the way, they're at a disadvantage, they're at a disadvantage, they're at a disadvantage. So going to a grammar school meant that I was able to get that information. So it really advantaged me. I'm not an expert on the education system. I guess the argument would be that it perhaps disadvantaged some other kids from poorer backgrounds who then didn't have access to me. I went to grammar school, then I got expelled 5 or 6 years later, and I went back to the local comprehensive, and I was back with a lot of kids who went to primary school with me. And kids who were on a level with me in primary school, they were a long way behind then. And it's not because they weren't as smart as me, because back in primary school they were as smart as me. It's simply the fact that I was competing with a lot of other smart kids, and I was aware that you need to get A star in every subject, you know what I mean? So I was just at a high level of competition, and then from these kids not having access to me, they're disadvantaged in the same way that I was advantaged by having access to other smart kids. So that's the argument, but I'm not an expert on the education system. I enjoyed my time at grammar school until I got expelled, which was not much fun. But then I also enjoyed my time back at comprehensive after that. And I don't really know. It was difficult. I became more aware of inequality, financial inequality, and unfairness. And it probably put a drive in me that stayed there for a long time to prove that kids like me, who talk like me, who look like me, are not stupid and that we can do it. And I think that was a big part of the drive that made me successful at university and later in my job. So, no, look, I mean, in the end, for me, I'm just glad that I was able to see so many different things in my childhood. Growing up in London, growing up around all people from all different cultures, and then from grammar school, I also got to see like a variety of financial backgrounds that I wouldn't have got to see if I went to comprehensive school. So I just got to see more of like how many different ways of living that there are. And then now having gone to work in the city, like, and I see how rich some people are, you know what I mean? You just see like what a variety is, and it helps you, I think as an economist, that's helped me so much. Because I think it's actually quite rare nowadays to meet somebody who has experienced poverty and has experienced wealth. You won't meet many people like that in your life, unfortunately, because nowadays we live in a world where largely people who come from poor backgrounds don't have the opportunity to become rich, and people who are born in rich backgrounds are extremely protected and will almost certainly stay rich. So what that means then is, as an economist, there's very few people who can actually understand from experience the whole economy, because most people have either spent their whole life being poor, in which case, to be honest, they probably won't be allowed into the conversation, because there's not many people from poor backgrounds who are in the world of economics. More often than not, it's full of people who spend their whole lives being rich. And then you can't really be surprised when somebody who spent their whole life being rich, and it's not just they spent their whole life being rich, they went to school with people who are rich, they went to university with people who are rich, and now they're working with people who are rich. You know, probably the only person they know who's poor is their cleaner, you know what I mean, if they talk to them. So like, these people, like, they live a world of not really interacting with poor people. So you can't be surprised when they don't really understand the way that inequality affects an economy, because they haven't witnessed inequality. They don't really know on a human personal level the difference between being poor and being rich, and poor people and rich people, and the way these people behave economically and the way these people spend. So I actually think that, you know, I was one of the most profitable traders in the whole world at 24 years old. That shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be possible. But the reason it is possible is because if you go onto the trading floors, it's entirely populated by people who only know rich people. So they're kids. They have no experiential understanding of the economy. And yet I was one of the only people on that trading floor that knew the economy from both sides. So I had such a huge advantage of understanding how the economy works. So I think I'm sort of lucky to have come from that poor background and then gotten into that world, and going into grammar school was one of the reasons why that was able to happen, I guess. People hate bankers and people hate traders. I can understand why. I worked with a few bankers and I worked with a few traders, and there's some unpleasant characters out there. Although I should add that I've also worked with some amazing, really, really nice people. But the truth is, that job is a job that can take you from a poor background and make you financially secure. And that's what it did for me. But already since I did it, that job has become, one, harder to get for kids from an ordinary background. Like, as you know, I got that job by winning a card game. You can't do that nowadays. Now you probably need connections, or you need to have a CV that says like, you're a concert pianist who's like climbed Mount Everest, you know what I mean? And you can guess what kind of people have those kind of CVs. So now it's like harder to get that job. And secondly, once you get that job, the pay has collapsed. Like, it's not possible to go in there and work for like 3 or 4 years and smash a load of money and then leave and try and do something else like what I'm doing now. Now, like, you probably have to stick around for 10, 15, 20 years to make that kind of money. So even if I was 10 years younger than I am, I wouldn't be able to be sitting here doing this work that I'm doing now. I would need to still be in the bank. So it's, even the path that I took, which was a super difficult path even back then, even that path has been, whilst not closed off, it's become much less accessible for people from ordinary backgrounds. And you know, I worked on a trading floor. There's this stereotype of the sort of cockney geezer wide boy. The truth is, almost everyone who works as a trader on a trading floor from a top bank comes from a relatively privileged background. So even that path, working in finance, which is one of the most feasible paths out of poverty, has almost been closed off now. So I think it has gotten worse. Ordinary people see, they get like a kind of stereotyped image of how rich people live from TV and Instagram and this kind of stuff. That's more visible. But I think richer people don't get such a good understanding of how ordinary people live, because that kind of way of life is not really glamorized and not really shown. And also I think, unfortunately, a lot of wealthy people just don't really care because ordinary people aspire to be rich, right? But rich people don't aspire to be ordinary people, right? Rich people tend to be, you know, I remember when I quit my job and, you know, I'm aware I'm phenomenally lucky to have made the money that I made, right? And I made in whatever, 5 or 6 years, more money than my parents made in their entire careers, like much, much more. But then when I quit, the people at the bank really, really didn't want me to quit. And one of the big senior bosses sat me down and he said, that amount of money you made is nothing. It's, that's gonna run out and you're gonna need more in like a couple of years. Yeah, and I was just thinking, it's just crazy what a distorted understanding of the world and of money a lot of these very rich people have. Because, you know, my parents raised a family of 3 kids for, you know, less than, you know, a quarter of what I'd earned in that, you know, time. They raised the whole family, you know, lived the whole life on that. And they think I'm gonna run out, you know. But it's just, unfortunately, it's like I've said, increasingly, rich people, they live in quite a closeted world, right? They send their kids to private schools, then they go to elite universities, and then they get elite jobs, and they only know other rich people. So often they don't think they're rich because they compare themselves to people around them, and they have a tendency to compare themselves to people who are a bit richer than them. So they just think like, oh yeah, I'm a bit richer than maybe those common folk, but actually I'm not that rich, you know, this guy's got more than me. It's that classic keeping up with the Joneses, you know what I mean? So that is why, to be frank, I'm such a better economist than them, because they have a distorted image of reality that comes from the extremely closeted part of the world that they see. And that comes from this complete separation we have of ordinary people and the rich. They go to different schools, different universities, they get different jobs. And then what is most problematic is in these really powerful jobs, like economics, like trading in the city, government, it becomes only populated by this class of super rich people who have no idea what the ordinary world is like. And then you can't be surprised when their predictions are always wrong and the outcomes are always bad, because ultimately these guys have not been chosen because they're the best. They've been chosen because they're from the right families. So we're not getting the smartest people in the top jobs. And then you can't be surprised when we have an incompetent government, and you can't be surprised when we have terrible human outcomes. You know, if you destroy social mobility, a direct consequence of that is unintelligent people in top jobs. That's obvious, right? If the best people were in the best jobs, then they'd come from all throughout society. But right now, they all come from the same schools and the same families. So we're wasting like 90% of the population. And then it's a drive towards incompetence, and it's a drive towards idiocy. And you know, I went to Oxford University to do a master's. It drove me mad, the level of incompetence and lack of understanding from these powerful professors. They've got no idea what ordinary people's lives are like, and they don't care because they're getting paid. It doesn't affect them. We've created a generation of young men who have had wealth and financial success shoved down their throats for their whole childhoods and have no legitimate means of getting those things. There is one other thing they can do with that massive amount of income. They can buy your mum's house.